Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Beyond the Blueprint, a conversation about how to become better by design and managing complexity. At Beyond the Blueprint, we think a good design helps an organization focus on your mission, to be flexible with your plans, and to be transparent in your communications, addressing the opportunities and challenges for staff and patients looking for leadership in managing change to adopt new processes and workflows. So I'm Keith Washington. I'll be your host for today's episode. And with me is Greg Malkery, founder and managing director of Spyglass Consulting, and normally your host. And so, Greg, sorry for your demotion. Do you have any opening comments?
I'm excited about today's topic with Patrick, where we're going to discuss the critical role of systematic design deploying wearable technologies to enhance patient safety. I guess the key realization here is not just about deploying cool gadgets, but it's about integrating technology seamlessly within the patient care process. So I'm looking forward to a thoughtful conversation today.
Great, thanks, Greg. Also, I'd like to welcome our sponsors, Storage Systems Unlimited and Simplified Medical. So with us today is Lars Anderson from Storage Systems. Welcome, Lars, and please introduce yourself.
This is Lars Anderson with Storage Systems Unlimited. We're a distributor of a number of different storage items, including telehealth carts, partner with our good friends over at Simplify. So looking forward to a nice education here on how things are developing and where we're headed.
Well, thanks, Lars. So today I'm excited to welcome Patrick Baker, CEO of Pallarum, an emerging leader in wearable technology. But before we start our conversation with Patrick, I'd like to share a video with you from Pallarum. Great video. Patrick, can you tell us more about mobility age and what it means and why it's important? And then also, I guess, tell us about yourself, your background, and how you started Pallarum, what Pallarum's all about.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me and the invitation to come talk to everybody. All I know is healthcare. That's all I've done. I've grown up in healthcare. I started out as an Air Force medic and did that for 4 years, worked in the emergency room, was an EMT, and then got out of the Air Force active duty, went into nursing school at Ohio State, stayed in the reserves, and then ended up going back and getting my master's degree in hospital finance administration. So over the last, I spent 25 years, 10 years active duty, 15 years in the reserves in the military, did a tour over in Iraq. In my nursing career, I've worked as an emergency room nurse, I've worked med-surg, I've worked peri-op services, worked my way up in the hospital from a manager, from a charge nurse to a manager to a nursing director to a chief nursing officer for about 10 years. All I've done is grown up in healthcare, and all I know is patient safety and hospital care. So that kind of led us to this evolution of what are we doing in healthcare and how do we manage that precious cargo and keep them safe, because we all know the statistics about injuries and mistakes and accidents that happen in hospitals every day. And I always remind people, people come to work with nothing but the best of intentions to take care of the patients that are there, and yet there's still mistakes. There's medical errors, there's wrong site surgeries, there's patient falls. So one of the things that we were struggling with at the hospital was patient falls. We always seem to have the same amount of patient falls every year. And when you look at the historical trends, we would have about 600-700 falls across the system. And it just, something was not sitting right with me. So we got together and we went to the Gemba, we went to the nursing units, and we did some debriefings with the staff, and we looked at all types of protocols and education and yellow socks and different things. I got a pair here, a pair of these yellow socks. So nothing was working. And, and we were sitting around brainstorming, and then one day there was an epiphany I had at work, where we're doing a root cause analysis on patient falls, and we're looking at what happened with that specific fall. There was a fall with injury, and it was a fractured hip. And I'm looking through the post-fall report, and there's a little question there that says, was the bed alarm on? And I'm thinking to myself, why do we ask if the bed alarm is on? Because our protocols say if there are fall risks, the bed alarms are on. So I got to ask, did we have them on? And the box was checked, no. So long story short, I again went back to the Gemba, talked to the nurses involved with the care, and I said, help me understand, why are we turning off the bed alarms for these patients that we've identified as fall risk? And long story short, the nurses all, we took off our badges. It was a safe environment. We could talk freely. And the staff said to me, they said, Patrick, listen, I went into that room 3 or 4 times. The patient was not out of bed. They were in a lot of pain. They kept moving around in bed a lot. And I turned off the bed alarm because it kept triggering a lot of false alarms. And she said, I meant to go back in there and turn the alarm back on, but I got busy. She says, I was afraid I keep getting interrupted. I'm going to make a medication error over here because I'm chasing false alarms here. And I left that meeting thinking to myself, okay, well, here's a nurse that, again, comes to work with good intentions, and she's purposely turning off alarms that should be on because they're not effective. So I'm not saying that because I'm anti-bed alarms. Bed alarms work. When patients get out of bed, it works. The problem is when they move around in bed too much, and the sensitivity, and there's all kinds of new technology with bed alarms and stuff. The problem is the false alarms and the interruptions. And so there's alarm fatigue is real, false alarms are real. And so that's what triggered me. We got together and we said every patient gets a pair of socks. Every patient in the hospital gets a pair of socks. I said, okay, well, why can't we make a smart sock? And so what we did is we said, okay, we've got a sock, and we can have conductive yarn be the sensors and thread, and we can put the anti-skid traction on. And I said, so instead of these socks that cost about 20 cents and do nothing, I said, why can't we have a smart sock that will allow us to know when the patient gets up out of bed that it's reliable, it's accurate, and the nurses can depend on that alert to react to it in the appropriate manner, right? So that's we left there thinking, let's do that. So then we got together with some funding and some engineering teams, and we were able to create this amazing sock. Like I said, it's just conductive yarn, and when that patient gets up out of bed and stands, it will then send an alert. What's really neat about it is I was really chasing the alarm fatigue and false alarms. So when that patient, think of the sensors as a force plate. It hits the ground. There's got to be enough weight distributed, right? But the beetle, there's a little beetle that goes here to connect it. That beetle has an accelerometer and gyroscope. So when that patient gets up, they have to be in a standing position. There's a pitch, roll, and yaw. There's a weight on the bottom of the sock. So that algorithm has to check the list to say, yes, they're standing. Yes, there's enough weight. Yes, there's a pitch, roll, and yaw. And then it will send the alert to the nurses. So we've really take a lot of pride in the fact that we've dialed in the accuracy, the reliability piece for the notification. So we think we've built a better mousetrap with the alerting of that, protecting that fall risk population. But real quickly, the one thing I'm really proud of was it was then the next problem on the equation was how do you problem solve who to notify and when? And so the issue that we currently have in nursing is that we tend to have a phone and your assignment is tagged to your phone. And so the alerts come to your phone, which is great, that's fine. But the problem is when the nurses leave the unit and go to lunch, take a patient to x-ray or to a procedure or discharge a patient, the system doesn't know the nurse has left the unit. And so we're sending alerts and alarms to nurses who aren't in a proximity to do anything about it. Well, they don't respond, then it goes and gets escalated, and then it goes to other people. And so now I'm alarming and alerting other people that don't need to be because the system doesn't know where I'm at, if that makes sense. So that contributes to alarm fatigue. That contributes to too many alarms. So what we did was we created a smart badge for our system. And so when that patient gets up out of bed and it's a fall risk, in my mind, that's a safety event. And anybody can help out in a safety event. And so what our system does that's unique and different than any other hospital that I know of is that when that safety event occurs in real time, it activates all the badges, looks for where everybody is, and it will find the 3 closest staff members to that room in real time. So when you get an alert from us, we know it's accurate, we know it's the 3 closest people. And so my hypothesis during our clinical trials was, okay, A, can we be accurate and reliable? And then B, my secondary hypothesis was, okay, by pinging the 3 closest people in proximity, will that help drive down fall reduction numbers? At Ohio State in our clinical trials, we had almost approximately a year of a clinical trial there on and off with COVID. That's another story. But the nurses were able to get in there in approximately less than 30 seconds. So imagine that. In a world where nurse call bell times are anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes, that's what they say, 3 to 8 minutes from a call light, we were in there in less than 30 seconds. And being able to identify fall risk patients, they're up, get in there and intervene before they make it all the way to the bathroom or on their way back and intercept that safety event and prevent a fall. We had 0 patient falls at Ohio State during that clinical trial. So I really take a lot of pride in the opportunity, Keith, to share this with everybody is the new way to try to problem solve with the smart sock, but then also on top of that notification piece of finding the 3 closest people. And the last point I'll make on that, with why that is so important, is because there's all kinds of literature out there that talks about reliability with alerts and alarms. Mm-hmm. So if a nurse or a doctor or a clinician, if they trust the alert they're getting, their response time correlates to their response. If I, in my mind, if I think a bed alarm or some other alarm is false half the time, my response and sense of urgency to responding to that alert is going to be lag. There's going to be a lag. There's going to be a delay. Okay? So we know that there's a 1-to-1 correlation with reliability and alarming if it's real. And so that's one of the things I took a lot of pride in with this study was the fact that they were reliable, they were real, and the staff pinging the 3 closest people, and the results were there with the data.
Wow, that's an amazing series of steps. So I think it actually aligns really well with what we like to talk about on Beyond the Blueprints. We talk about how design thinking intersects with system thinking, and you identified a problem, you worked on a design concept, and then you integrate it as a system. And I think that's really compelling in terms of the value. But then that other piece, I want to just bring now into this conversation about the mobility score, how there's like this bigger picture strategic long-term aspect to the tech where fall prevention is maybe just the first step on the journey.
Yeah, no, great point. Thank you. So, I always like to start with the end in mind, and we say, okay, this is where we want to be, but you got to take your steps, your sequence, right? A, B, and C. A was let's build the platform, let's build the foundation, let's integrate with the hospital so we can do this. And then to your point, Keith, great point, the mobility piece we're super excited about because nobody is measuring patient progression. We call it, we want, the literature overwhelmingly states, we want people up and moving. We don't want them laying in bed. But yet we got a culture of, they're a fall risk. We got to watch them, keep them in bed. So there's a fine line there. So we want to get people up to the bed, up to the chair. We want to get people up and ambulating, but we got to watch them when they're not with somebody. So the next step with our journey and our technology is, because you have that smart sock on, we're going to be able to tell you how many steps the patient took each day. We're going to be able to tell you how long did they sit in the chair, that day. So the goal is it flows right into the EMR. The clinicians can come into work, walk into that patient's room, and they can see, hey, Patrick took 35 steps today. He was up out of bed in the chair for 3 hours. We don't have that information. We have it it's scattered. If the nurses take the time to document it, but we all know we get busy. There's times I don't document things. So what the SOCs would be able to do, and what technology does, is it allows you to level the playing field. Everybody gets documentation. It all flows into the EMR, and the clinicians then can rely on that information as a data point and create trend lines, right? So a post-op hip, we want to see that they've taken more steps on day 1. How many steps did they take on post-op day 2? How many times did they get up to the chair? So it's going to complement physical therapy and rehab, and we know how busy they are in hospitals, but it just really helps nursing with the documentation of that patient progression, that patient mobility piece on top of the fall prevention.
Yeah, well, that's really exciting. So, so Greg, you spend a lot of time looking at the tech stack, doing research in the market. What would you like to ask Patrick on his journey through this fall prevention mobility?
There's a lot I would love to ask Patrick. One thing that comes to mind, though, is that I was looking too myopically at your solution as just fall prevention. It's actually a hell of a lot more than that actually goes into the care process, which I wasn't aware of. So in a lot of ways, I can't look at you in this narrow fashion. But when you're just looking at the efficacy of the solution, because you did say that there were clinical trials that you guys conducted, when you look at this compared to other types of fall prevention technologies, what were you able to glean from the clinical trials?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. We're really proud of our results. Our goal when we started was to reduce patient falls by 25%. That was our big, fat, hairy, audacious goal, 25% reduction in falls. Because most fall committees in the hospitals, their goal is 5% reduction, just 5%. That's because it's so hard. And so we thought, well, if we do 25%, that'd be changing the world, right? We've blown past that. Our clinical trials to date, we've now exceeded 40,000 patient days with our SOCs. Our fall rate is 1.3 falls per 1,000 patient days. Now, what does that mean? CMS, Medicare, and all that, the average fall rate is anywhere between 3.5 to 4 to 4.5 to even 5 falls per 1,000. So our fall rate we've reduced falls by over 60% nationally with our SOCs. So we are on very happy. I tell people we're no longer we're not proving out the technology anymore. We've proven it. Now we just got to help with the market traction and help those patients and keep that precious cargo safe in those hospitals. But the return on investment piece. So we looked at the 25% because the amount of money it costs for the system compared to the amount of money you save as a hospital. Because when there's a patient fall, some people don't know this, there's HACs, hospital-acquired conditions. Hospitals do not get reimbursed for certain conditions. Patient falls is a HAC, one of the conditions. So if you have a patient who falls in the middle of the night, they're there for pneumonia, and they fracture their hip, well, they're going to stay 6 more days. They're going to go to surgery. The hospital has all that extra cost. You have potential litigation. You may have a sentinel event you have to file. I mean, there's all kind of ramifications from a cost standpoint to hospitals. So what we are hoping to do is drive out those falls and then help mitigate those falls. So then we're saving the hospital money that they would be spending on all those falls that they have historical numbers for. They can't run from their historical numbers. They're going to have patient falls. It's going to happen. What can we do to mitigate and lower those total falls, which then lowers the total expenses, if that makes sense?
That makes total sense. But one thing also, with this compelling ROI, and it does seem quite compelling, is this a high investment priority for healthcare organizations? It seems like it would be.
Well, it seems like it would be. I think, Keith, you said it well one time when we were talking about, is it a pricing conflict or a priority conflict? And the hospitals have a lot of competing priorities. And so it just really comes down to where the hospitals are at with their mission towards safety. What I like to do, Greg, to help them is we have a false cost calculator where we look at, okay, every hospital has a surveillance program. They're currently paying for something right now. So whether that is patient sitters, whether that's video monitoring equipment, whether that's there's different strategies, let's just say. And so what I like to do when I talk to hospitals is say, okay, well, what are you currently doing? What is your current fall rate? And so what I like to try to do is say, okay, here's the money you're spending currently, and here's the results you're getting. So you may have a three falls per 1,000 fall rate, okay, and you're spending X amount on patient sitters, video sitters, all this stuff. We're saying, wouldn't you like it to be 1.3 falls per 1,000, and we can save you the money you're spending on video sitters and patient sitters and all that stuff. I say take that good money and use it on newer technology that can help you. The issue with the cost comparison, and I'm all for, if we get into it, I'm all for creating a strategy that's a hybrid approach. You're looking at your fall risk patients, you're doing a risk stratification of, hey, we can do remote monitoring for this bulk of the majority, remote patient monitoring. And then this subgroup might need video cameras, and this subgroup might need it. But I think there's a blend that you work, and you can really then look to drive falls down, lower your cost. But the problem with the video sitters, and I purchased them. So full disclosure, I purchased video cameras at the hospital. The issue is I've got 200 beds, but I've only got 15 cameras. Okay, so about a third of the patients are going to be fall risk on any given night. So if there's 66 patients that are fall risk and I've only got 15 cameras, who's deciding who gets it, who doesn't? But then I've got to pay an FTE to watch the cameras, okay? And so then I got to go find the cameras, I got to move them around to rooms. So my point is the video monitoring is expensive, and I got to hire FTEs. And then, and the patient sitters, oh my goodness, those are really expensive. And one of the dirty secrets in hospitals and staffing, and I don't know if we can go there, is that, let's say the patient sitter who's supposed to watch the monitors for the video sitters calls off. Well, what do? What we've done in the past is we've pulled a nurse from the unit for staffing, out of staffing, to go watch those 10 monitors. So now you're paying somebody $30, $40 an hour to watch the monitors, and you just took a nurse off your unit. Now, I just share that with you that the video monitors, they're nice and they have a role, but they're just FTE dependent. And I had one place, and this is a true story, she says, well, if we don't have staffing for the video cameras, we just don't use the video cameras. And I was like, I go, so what are you doing for your fall risk patients that you said needed it? She goes, well, we just don't use it that night. And I'm like, so I just think we can do better. And what I really like about the SOCs, if I could implore the folks when they're looking at innovation technology, is this is where technology is going. It's the remote monitoring. It's able to safely remotely monitor these patients with no additional FTEs. And that's the key, is staffing has just gone downhill from COVID. Nursing staffing ratios, patient to nurse ratios have gone up. They're asked to do more. And so I just think we got to find ways to help do more remotely and keep the staff at the bedside.
I love your stratification approach. That makes total sense. Are there specific departments or classifications of types of patients that you can kind of keep them or segment in how they organize the units so that it might make it easier to manage?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's hard to do that on a unit by unit basis because because every patient, whether you're a neuro patient, you're a surgical patient, we use the Morris Fall scale. You answer questions depending on how many medications you're on, your pain level, your situation. That's what's going to drive your risk of being a fall patient. So, I mean, obviously your diagnosis plays a role in there, but it's, so Greg, great question. It's hard to do it by units, if that makes sense. Like here's our fall unit, or something like that. So that's why falls are such a problem in the hospitals, because they're scattered on every unit, med surg, surgical, oncology, ICU. It's every patient could be a fall risk based on their current comorbidities and different cognitive states and different pain levels. So it's hard. But that's where it's nice, where you don't have to roll cameras in, you don't have to do different things. You have the technology embedded, and you just choose whether to put the socks on them or not if you need them. And so then the staff's not running around looking for equipment, doing other things.
Yeah, so fall prevention is a great application of precision medicine, right? You're being very specific, very patient specific.
Right.
Very cool. Well, we're actually running up towards our end of our time here. Gosh, I'd really like to thank you, Patrick, for joining us today. I think this is really great discussion. So I want to give you a chance. Do you have any, let's say, closing comments or something you want us to talk about in the future, how to get in touch with you?
Sure. So Patrick Baker, my email is pbaker@Pallarum, PALARUM.com, which happy to talk with anybody. We are now currently live in 5 different states. We keep growing year over year. We're excited to talk with you. We're excited to come in and even just do a consultation with you at the hospital to say, hey, what are you doing? How are you managing falls? And I've been a nurse. I've been a CNO for over 30 years. I'm happy to have that conversation and help you look at your surveillance program. I think, Keith, that's the key. Every hospital has a surveillance program, right, but is it really effective? And are you getting what you're paying for? But yeah, so our company will be at the Magnet Conference in New Orleans at the end of October. So if there's nurses out there that are going to be at the Magnet Conference, we'd love to see you. Stop by our booth. We'll have a big sock above our station there. You won't miss us.
A big smart sock.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'd also like to thank our sponsors today, Storage Systems Unlimited and Simplify Medical, who made this conversation possible. And then I'd also like to turn it over to Greg. Greg, any final thoughts? And why don't you tell us a bit about Spyglass and the work you're doing?
Great. Okay. Well, Patrick, I'll be honest with you. I learned a lot just in this small time today, and I'm really curious a lot more about what you're doing, because I think you're onto something big. I just had a very myopic view of wearables, and as Keith was telling me about what Pallarum does. So I hope you come back and we can explore some other tangential topics. For those of you in the audience not familiar, Spyglass is a product and go-to-market advisory firm focused on disruptive technologies and growth opportunities within the healthcare industry. Probably serve more than 250 leading entities, including technology companies, management consultancies, healthcare providers, and investment organizations. We've produced more than 30 market research reports on various informatics-related topics. To access our extensive library or paid research, or to gain a deeper insight into how technology is reshaping healthcare, I encourage you to visit my website at www.spyglass-consulting.com.
Great. Thank you, Greg. So, I'd like to say, Patrick, I'm really encouraged with the progress you're making, your technology. I really hope it'll inspire leaders listening to this webinar that, this is a really breakthrough technology that, you add this to your people and your process. This is a valuable tool. I think it could really help leaders achieve their patient safety goals. I think it's a really important conversation that they could be having, and it really is a priority topic. One of the things we like to do is really to break through some of the communications, is have fun. So I want to maybe part of this webinar share a fun video that I found that was related to fall prevention called Call Don't Fall. Is a parody song. So I'm gonna share that with the audience. And then again, thank you, Patrick, and we'll look forward to having you coming back. And thanks everybody for joining Beyond the Blueprint, and we look forward to future conversations. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you.
Most hospital falls happen when patients are getting out of bed. So please remember, and this is very important, call your nurse if you need to get out of bed, okay?
Yeah, take my purse if I get a bump on the head. Got it.
What? No. Okay, maybe this will help you remember.
Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't prevent falling without you. Like a body falls because of gravity, darling, so it goes. Some things don't have to be. Take my hand and I'll give my all. If you must get up, darling, please call. Don't fall.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
60% of falls occur when patients are getting out of bed. Don't be a statistic. Call Don't Fall.